To avoid becoming a body by the docks, I should probably finish reviewing the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. In this video, we're tackling the third and final book, The Last Argument of Kings. Now, if you've watched my reviews of the Blade itself and Before They Are Hanged, you'll know that I'm absolutely loving this series. This is my first time reading anything First Law, and it's been an absolute treat so far. The character work is a step above pretty much everything else I've read, at least recently. As always, this will be a spoiler-free review of The Last Argument of Kings. However, I will mention some things from the first two books, as we need to talk about where our characters are and set the stage. So if you haven't read them, I suggest you bookmark this video, come back later, and enjoy the journey spoiler-free. For those of you who are already caught up, you're good to go. And if you're new to the channel, welcome my fellow named men and women. I'm Todd, and I review and discuss science fiction, fantasy, and horror novels. The end is near, and every thread of the story is tightening around our main characters. Logen Ninefingers might have one last fight left in him, but this one is bound to be brutal. Bethod's war is blazing across the north, and there's only one person who can truly stop him. For Logen, it's time to confront this bloody past, as the fate of the North rests entirely on his shoulders. This journey back home to the mud and violence is one that he's always known is going to bring the infamous Bloody Nine back to the heart of the conflict. Superior Glokta, on the other hand, is fighting a completely different war, one fought in the shadows and secrets. As he moves through Adua, his enemies surround him at every turn, yet none are visible. His only weapon now is blackmail, threats, and torture, all wielded with the same ruthless efficiency he once used on the battlefield. Glokta is no stranger to betrayal, and in this war, even his own allies can't be trusted. With more masters than he can handle, and time running out, Glokta's secret war becomes an intricate dance of survival, deception, and manipulation. Meanwhile, Jazaldan Luther has decided he's had enough of the glory and the pain that comes along with being a soldier. He's turned away from the battlefield to pursue a simple life with the woman he loves. But in Abercrombie's world, no one is safe from the pool of ambition, and Jazal soon finds himself being dragged back into the very life he tried to escape. Glory, it seems, has a way of finding you, even when you least expect it, or in this case, you don't even want it. The Union itself is on the brink of chaos. With the king on his deathbed, the nobles are scrambling to seize power, all while the peasants rise in revolt, disillusioned and angry. The Union's own internal strife threatens to tear it apart, but no one seems prepared for the looming shadow of war on their doorstep. And the Union teeters, Baez, the first of the Magi, reemerges with a grand plan to save the world, or at least his version of it. Baez's motives, as ever, are shrouded in secrecy, and while he claims to act for the greater good, those close to him sense the terrible risks he's willing to take. After all, there's no greater risk than breaking the First Law itself. The Last Argument of Kings weaves these escalating conflicts together as each character faces their reckoning. Abercrombie brings us to those explosive final act of the trilogy, pushing every character to the limit and forcing them to confront their darkest fears, their worst enemies, and ultimately themselves. One of the most compelling aspects of The Last Argument of Kings is Abercrombie's mastery of twists. This book is packed with some of the most unexpected turns I've really ever encountered in fantasy. Short of A Song of Ice and Fire, no other series has shocked me in quite the same way. This plot isn't merely building towards a single climactic surprise. About a third of the way through, there's a twist so massive that it shifts the perspective of the entire trilogy. And what makes these twists so powerful is that they don't feel forced. They're woven seamlessly into the story. You might even find yourself thinking, how did I not see this coming? Yet Abercrombie leaves enough foreshadowing to make these twists, they feel earned, even if you feel like, you were just hit with a ton of bricks. In terms of pacing, The Last Argument of Kings strikes a perfect balance and is the best in the series thus far. This isn't a relentless action ride, it's about the build-up, the tension, and carefully timed explosions of action and revelation. When Abercrombie delivers, he truly delivers. The final third of the book is a thrill ride, and if you're anywhere near the last 200 pages, you're not going to want to put this one down. But as I've always said, the real strength of the series lies in its characters. Abercrombie pushes each character to their limits, and their arcs come full circle in a way that range from beautifully redemptive to gut-wrenchingly tragic. Loken's journey, for example, reaches a conclusion that feels inevitable in hindsight. His resolution is a blend of tragedy and stark realism, and while it might not be the ending some readers expect or want, it's one that feels true to his character. It's a perfect example of Abercrombie's commitment to an authenticity and character development, no matter how dark the path may be. Then we have Glokta, whose arc is remarkable in its own way. If there's anything close to a happy ending in this grim world, Glokta's outcome might be the closest to it. Even so, it's no fairy tale conclusion, and there's a certain ambiguity to it that keeps you wondering. Glokta's journey throughout the entire trilogy has been one of survival, deception, and moral decay, and the way Abercrombie brings this story to a close feels as satisfying as it does unsettling. Then we have Wes, and he also experiences a powerful redemption arc in this book. For some, his actions in the Blade itself may be irredeemable, yet in the end, Abercrombie manages to bring Wes back to a place where you can see him as a leader worth following into battle. Abercrombie handles Wes's story with a level of nuance that makes his redemption believable and hard-won. Then there's Pharaoh, and her journey reaches a powerful, albeit ambiguous conclusion. In the first two books, her character was the most underdeveloped, but her development across this book stands out. Some of the most memorable moments in the entire trilogy come from her chapters. She confronts her own demons and desires in a way that feel raw and true to her character. While her ending might leave you with more questions than answers, it's incredibly satisfying to see just how far she's actually come. Dogman's perspective in this book is especially bleak, and for good reason. Out of all the characters, he suffered the most losses. The weight of the war and the deaths around him, they leave him questioning his purpose and his place in this brutal world. Dogman's arc is a deeply introspective one, where the cost of survival becomes almost as heavy as the cost of defeat. Abercrombie captures Dogman's inner conflict beautifully, making his journey one of the most relatable and tragic in the series. Jezal, however, is the character who evolves the most. His transformation from an arrogant noble in the Blade itself to his role in this final book is one of the most striking arcs in modern fantasy. Abercrombie crafts Jezal's journey with a careful hand, turning him into someone who genuinely you can empathize with, despite his flaws. His arc is tragic and unexpected, and it's a testament to Abercrombie's ability to make you care about characters you once despised. And then there's Baez. Oh, Baez. His role in The Last Argument of King is complex and deeply unsettling. He is the character who continues to surprise and horrify throughout this book. Some of the revelations involving Baez are so well executed that they may leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the story. Baez's arc is handled with such finesse that it's hard not to admire the layers Abercrombie has woven into this character. Even if those layers reveal a darkness that's sometimes hard to stomach. How you feel about the series as a whole may very well hinge on your reaction to the choices Abercrombie makes with Baez. Abercrombie excels at tying up most of the mysteries introduced in the earlier books. If you've been waiting to learn more about the Eaters, the Seed, Valiant and Balk, and the Daughters of the Maker, you'll find those questions answered here in a way that feels satisfying and at times shocking. Yet true to form, Abercrombie doesn't hand over every answer on a silver platter. Some mysteries remain, some threads are left open, and a few new questions are raised, hinting at a world that continues beyond the pages of this book. This balance of revelation and ambiguity is one of the reasons The Last Argument of Kings feels like such a fully realized conclusion, even as it invites readers to wonder what might lie beyond. Now, if you've come this far, there's no turning back. The Last Argument of Kings is one of the best conclusions to a trilogy I've ever read. But be warned, this is grimdark at its finest. If you've been expecting a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. This is a story where good guys don't always win, if there were even good guys at all. It's dark, it's brutal, and it doesn't pull its punches. But that's kind of what makes it so special. Abercrombie has created one of the most compelling character-driven series in fantasy, and the way he wraps up these arcs of these deeply flawed, morally ambiguous characters is nothing short of masterful. The ending of The Last Argument of Kings is divisive, and it's one I can picture really pissing off a lot of fans. Personally, I'm ambivalent. While it's not exactly conclusive, it feels earned. Looking back on the series as a whole, I don't know why I thought it would be. The first two books had less than stellar endings, and while I wouldn't call the ending of The Last Argument of Kings bad, it's not going to be for everyone. If you're a character-driven reader like myself, this series is a must-read. Abercrombie's ability to craft complex, deeply flawed characters is unparalleled, and this final book delivers on all promises of the first two. Wrapping up the First Law trilogy with The Last Argument of Kings was an experience. I can see myself coming back to the series the same way I've done with A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings, and Harry Potter. Abercrombie doesn't go for the kind of ending that ties up everything neatly. This conclusion is raw, it's challenging, and in true grimdark fashion, unapologetically honest about the brutal world he's created. Abercrombie has been called a trailblazer in modern fantasy, and this book is the perfect example of why. By taking massive risks with his characters and story, he pushed boundaries that many authors avoid, and in doing so, he's given readers a story that feels both shocking and earned. There's a sense of completion to this final book that brings every plot thread and character arc in a way that, for better or worse, feels inevitable. You might not like where every character ends up, and you might not agree with every choice they make, but that's exactly what makes this ending feel so grounded. If you've come this far, you're already invested in these characters. And The Last Argument of Kings is a conclusion that delivers everything you've come to expect from the First Law and more. Abercrombie's dedication to his morally gray, complex characters shines in this book. There's no good versus evil or happily ever after, but that's what makes it memorable. In fact, the way Abercrombie sticks to this vision without pandering or holding back makes the series feel that much more powerful. The Last Argument of Kings is one of the most impactful character-driven stories I've come across in 25 years of reading fantasy and science fiction. Abercrombie made me question my assumptions about heroes and endings, and for that, this book and this trilogy, it's going to hold a special place on my shelf. Now, if you haven't started reading this series, I highly recommend picking it up. But if you're here, you've likely already seen the dark, twisted journey Abercrombie takes his readers on, and I'm sure you know this is a story that's going to stick with you. The Last Argument of Kings isn't just an ending, it's an invitation to revisit, reevaluate, and rethink everything you thought you knew about the fantasy genre. Now guys, that's it for today's video. I really appreciate you taking this ride with me, and I'm looking forward to starting the standalone First Law books in the near future. So, what did you think about the First Law? Did you like the way things wrapped up, or did you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below, and until next time, happy reading.